A Labour court in Kenya has ruled that Facebook's parent company Meta can be sued in the East African country. Meta tried to have a case dropped, arguing that Kenyan courts do not have jurisdiction over their operations because that is not where the company is based. But the Labour court judge dismissed that in a ruling on Monday. A former Facebook moderator in Kenya, on behalf of a group, is suing the company and its local outsourcing company Sama over poor working conditions. He claims that Meta did not offer mental health support to employees, required unreasonably long working hours, and offered minimal pay. The next step in the case will be considered by the court on March 8th. We're now joined by Ochil Dudley. He is a senior litigation lawyer at Katiba Institute, a constitutional research and litigation institute based in Nairobi. Now, Katiba is an intervention supporting the Meta case and is represented by Ochil Dudley. So, Dudley, what is the significance of this ruling, considering Facebook and other social media platforms have been accused of fueling violence here in Africa?
Well, I think this is the first step in seeking accountability for social media entities. Facebook has about 200 million users across Africa, and there are two cases. The first case says that Facebook's moderators do too much or so little, and they're so few. So that's the Labour case that was decided today on the point of whether Facebook could be sued in Kenya. The court said that they could be sued here, but there's a procedural steps that need to be done, that they need to be served in the US. And then there's another case which comes on later in April that's about the violence in Ethiopia, saying that Facebook does not do enough, especially because it has very few moderators to moderate hate speech or incitement to violence across social media platforms.
So how does this likely affect Facebook operations in Africa?
I think it begins to tell them that they need to do more. If you consider a country like Kenya, there are about 43, 44 ethnicities on Facebook, but speech published in most of these languages are not moderated. Facebook does not moderate speech in those languages. And so it tends to foment conflict and violence, especially around the electoral systems, electoral periods.
Right. So how should African countries defend themselves from such tech giants?
I think it's a little bit more how should they work together to better regulate speech on social media platforms. Because while you do not also want to advocate for censorship, especially as Katiba Institute, but then there's still a need to cut off the limits of speech that go beyond the excesses. Things like hate speech or propaganda for war or advocacy of hatred, that should not be permitted because it's forbidden by Kenya's constitution. But there's a need also to allow, while allowing free speech, to also make sure that these platforms are not abused, because many people use them and they can have great utility for passing on information in times like this. For example, if there's an earthquake somewhere, but at the same time, there's a need to police them to some extent to make sure that there's no abuse of the systems.